I like horror games. That said, I'm terrified of them. And you should be if you like them. Or else, what is there to like about them? That'd be like saying I love comedies and then never laughing at them. But what, you still just enjoy the atmosphere? Or you like the feeling of a horror game attempting to breach your supposedly uncrackable wall of stoicism, and not being scared by it makes you feel powerful. It's definitely a hallmark of masculinity. Like, if a girl and a guy were in a real life horror situation, the girl would feel safer with him if he handled it more calmly than if he panicked as hard as she did. And there's merit to that when there's actual stakes. But if a dude is playing a horror game and there's no real danger, him being scared should just be seen as an expression of openness to the experience. That guy IRL, when the chips are down, could still buckle up and focus on being dependable in a scary emergency when he knows people are actually counting on him. But if he's just playing a game, let him fall for a jump scare every once in a while without questioning his manhood, you know? I'd like to think that if I were in a real horror situation, I would survive by going temporarily insane and scaring whatever's scaring me right back. Like a spirit's walking down a hallway towards me and a girl, I'll just run at it screaming with my dick out and make it be like, what the fuck, I'm out of here. Maybe the girl never speaks to me again, but at least we're alive. Horror is one of the most popular bad game genres. 95% of all horror games are just cheap trash, but the good ones stand out. It's weird that horror games can still be scary after all these years. You'd think our brains would have adjusted to the expectations by now. I've probably played around 20 of them in my life and seen 20 more, but I still get got by random jump scares even if they're shitty. Whenever I watch people play bad horror games on YouTube, I react the same every time. It doesn't matter how bad or how stupid it is. I've still got my hand blocking half the screen with my fingers spread apart so I can look through the gaps because it's less scary if you're defending your eyeballs, except it's literally not. But it feels good to do anyway, like I'm still gonna jump at everything, but at least I was proactive. I am just easily spooked, but I'm also logical from a game perspective, which can sometimes help. Last year, there was an indie horror game that made a big splash because all the YouTubers were playing it and freaking out. It was called From the Darkness. A short little 90-minute experience. It had you going into an old apartment to look for your newly dead grandpa's photo album or something, and almost all of it took place inside that tiny little single apartment where there was a corpse in the bathroom, a creepy doll, and a big hulking monster always lurking just out of sight but making its presence felt. This game did a great job building tension and oppression in the atmosphere in an understated way, mostly just by constantly turning the damn lights off with like no fanfare. You'd turn the lights in a room on, go over to a corner of it and search, and the lights would just flick back off. You turn around, wary of seeing something, then go back and turn the lights back on, go to a different room, come back, lights are off again. Just dread-inducing, straight up. I'm actually getting chills typing this just thinking about it. Granted, it's 1 in the morning and my imagination is usually on steroids. But what I eventually discovered about halfway through the game is that there is no lose condition. You can't die. You can't get caught. You can walk right into the things that pop up at you. And as soon as I figured that out, I stopped being scared completely. Other things continued to happen that were on par with the original scariness conceptually, but once I was in my head about, oh, none of this is actually dangerous, I just went full badass mode and never hesitated again. I watch scary movies sometimes, and the scariest ones are the ones that could feasibly happen to you, based on the events in the movie, even if a supernatural element is involved. If a movie is like, oh, these scary things happened because the protagonist messed with a Ouija board or summoned a spirit, that shit doesn't bother me in my own life, because I'm like, well, I've never messed with a Ouija board, I'm Gucci, bro, I'm safe as hell. No reason for me to get murdered by a curse, I've never even met a witch. But movies where horror seems like it just happens to random people for no reason fuck me up. There's an older movie called Mirrors, starring Kiefer Sutherland, that I watched when I was 12 or 13, and I really shouldn't have, because it might have altered my psychological development. As you might guess, the movie is about doppelgangers of people that lurk in their mirrors and move independently of the people. But if they hurt themselves, it hurts the people too, even if they're not looking in the mirror as it's happening. You want to know what the scariest thing imaginable is? Regular looking people who are acting wrong. Humans or things that look like humans that behave unnaturally. There is a scene in Mirrors where a woman is taking a bath, not paying attention to anything, and then the camera pans out to her bathroom mirror where it shows that same woman standing in front of the mirror on the other side with what can only be described as an unholy grin on her face. The mirror entity then grabs hold of the top and bottom of her own jaws and starts ripping them apart vertically, while the woman in the bathroom starts feeling her jaws being ripped off without even seeing what's happening, so she starts screaming and you just see the bottom of her jaw torn off and her tongue like protruding downwards. Dude, when your bottom jaw isn't surrounding your tongue, it looks so terrifyingly disgusting. It's like your mouth gets twice as big as it falls apart. That movie is just not okay on any level. I didn't look in my mirror for a month after watching that, and now that I'm talking about it, I might need a few days again. I don't know what the scariest game I've ever played was, probably something like Outlast or Visage. I think the biggest scare I ever got, though, was from this game nobody's probably heard of called Yomawari Midnight Shadows. It's a top-down Japanese game I played on PS4 about monsters taking over a small town at night, but you start the game as a little girl wandering around lost in a forest with a flashlight, and after a while you come up to this clearing, and up to this point the game's had you opening up your journal to take notes or to show you tutorials. The journal functions as a pause menu too. You pull it up and you can change settings and save and quit the game and whatnot. So you come to this clearing, and you walk up to this spot, and the game hints for you to pull up your journal, so you do. But after like 2 seconds, a monster literally comes down through the top of the screen, pulls your journal down, makes a loud roaring sound, and presumably kills you as a jump scare while the game is frickin' paused. The key is to scare people where they think they're safe. I never thought a pause menu could be the location of my latest heart attack. It was late at night, I was alone in the dark when that happened, I just shut the game off right there. Like, nope, catch me again when it's daylight, my man, this is too much mental damage. That was my biggest jump scare, but I think the most disturbing and affecting thing I've ever seen in a game is the female spirit that haunts you in the visual novel The Letter. The first time you see that bitch clearly on your screen, I actually got whiplash and my neck was sore for 2 hours. And even after the initial shock of her showing up, since it's a visual novel, she obviously just stays on your screen until you scroll past all the dialogue in that scene. Like your character describing what she's looking at in her narrative inner monologue. But even after the shock wore off, I literally just couldn't look at the screen. I tried to force my eyes to just stare at her, couldn't look for more than a second before I had to look away. Multiple times. That is some sustained horror right there. And just from a mildly animated still image, that scene just straight up defeated my sensibilities. We were engaged in a battle of fortitude and I was the clear loser. I recommend The Letter. I never actually finished it. There's some clumsy-ass, pointless subject matter in it, but that ghost lady is a killer scare tactic. 2022 is leaving the first trimester, which means if it were a fetus, it would now have a detectable heartbeat, but I've been feeling 2022's heart beating since its inception. We've known since we collectively decided not to pull out in 2021 that its offspring was going to be great. All these things 2021 was supposed to have that got delayed, and every new announcement since has just bolstered the pedigree of our current year's contributions to the gaming industry. We're only a third of the way through, and what we already have is terrific. Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, Dying Light 2, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and the indies have stepped up to the plate already as well, with Nobody Saves the World, Rogue Legacy 2, Teardown, etc. It's only May and I've played 14 games this year. I'd consider good enough to deserve being on a top 20 list, competition notwithstanding, with 2 more known candidates still coming out this month in the form of Salt and Sacrifice, the sequel to my 2016 Game of the Year, Salt and Sanctuary, and The Evil Dead The Game, and still so much more on the horizon, provided it doesn't all get delayed to 2023 and we just repeat this cycle forever. But this year is literally already better than last year, and we've got 8 months to go. Count your damn blessings out here. I am so deep in the rabbit hole of gaming, I cannot even imagine what it's like to be a casual gamer. I pretty much never was one. Even as a kid, I was hardcore. My parents would limit my time, but I spent every second of that time committed. I grew up on Mario on the original NES, then Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo, then PS1 classics like Crash, Spyro, Frogger, Croc, Gex. I even played some Siphon Filter and Medal of Honor when my dad was around to watch. Through all this time, I was playing Pokemon on whatever Game Boy was current, all the handheld Mario games, eventually some Fire Emblem on Game Boy Advance. Then we moved to the PS2 and GameCube era, and I would just ask for every game I could get my hands on. PS2 was all Kingdom Hearts, God of War, Ratchet and Clank, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper. I garnered over 100 PS2 games by the end of it, and I wish I still had them, but I had to sell virtually all of them to pay for my PS3. I might be a digital guy now from PS4 onwards, but it is kind of tragic when I look at my shelf and see it full of PS3 and 360 games, knowing my PS2 collection once dwarfed both of them combined. GameCube was all the Mario sports games, Mario parties, Pokemon Coliseum and XD, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, aka the best GameCube game, and I probably spent no less than 3,000 hours casually playing Super Smash Bros. Melee by myself against CPUs. I never went competitive, never even knew that existed. I never learned any tech. I just played until I could win an itemless 1v3 against level 9 CPUs by being a raw as fuck 12-year-old. How do casual gamers play games? A couple hours of Nazi zombies on the weekend after a week of having a real job and paying attention to their family? Sounds like hell. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino. Watch all my videos by candlelight in a closed down saloon, and I'll see you guys next time.